Hello you guys, how are you all doing? Today I'm about to share with you guys this corset top that was highly requested. It's not as hard as it looks, trust me. I also tried adding grommets at the back for the lace-up detailing, which is very new to me, so let's get started. Because I'm going to use this thick woven fabric, I won't use any extra for lining, but in case you want to, please go ahead and cut out double of every single piece. Okay, so these are the patterns that I'm going to use today. I made my own patterns. You don't have to worry, I'll leave the link down below for you guys to download it. So let's get started with the first piece. I'm placing it over the fabric near the side edges, adding some pins so it won't move around when I trace it, and cutting it out. So basically I'm doing the same thing to the rest of the pattern piece, placing it over the fabric one by one and cutting it out. This is what they look like once they are all cut out. Now let's take off the pattern from the pieces. Oh, and here if you decide to use linen, just repeat the whole thing and cut out using all the patterns once again. Now moving on, I'm going to pin the pieces together for stitching. Starting from the first and the second piece, placing it both right side out and adding pins near the edges. Now although I'm not going to add any bones to my corset top, we will be adding some bone-like features. So as we are going to do front seam here, it's important to pin all the pieces right side out. Remember, right side out, not wrong side out. Now once all the pieces are added together, I'm going to sew all the pieces using straight stitch, leaving about a centimeter near the edges. Now after joining all the pieces together in one, it's really important to cut the extra raw edges hanging, and that's exactly what I'm doing, trimming off the excess raw edges. But also at the same time, make sure you don't trim over the seam line. Next, we are going to turn this into a front seam. Now if you've seen my previous video, you already know how to do it, but still, let me show you guys again in case you have not. So I folded the piece exactly over the seam line on the other side and doing a straight stitch, leaving about 2 to 3 centimeters near the edges. Now this is the reason why I asked you to join the pieces right side out at the first place, and also asked to trim off the raw edges. Now once you're done stitching all the front seam, turn your top right side up, fold your edges one by one and do a top stitch. This will give a bone-like structure to your corset without having to add any boning. And also because the material here is really thick, so it kind of helps. I don't think it will create the same look with a thin cotton fabric. Do this to all the seam lines, and this is what it should look like. Now moving on, for the back of the corset, I'm marking 18 inches as width and 10 inches as length, and drawing a straight horizontal line at the top. To narrow down the bottom, I'm taking 1.5 inches away from both the sides, just like I do to any other top. Next, I'm connecting both the top and the bottom corners of the top, drawing diagonal lines on both the sides and going to cut it out. Now once the piece is cut out, I'm folding it in half and cutting it out again. Now I have two pieces for the back of the corset, which I'm going to add it to the top, one on each side, using the same exact technique just like I added the other pieces together. So I'm first pinning the edges together, the right side out, going to sew the edges together using a straight stitch. Next, don't forget to trim off the excess raw edges, so when you fold it to stitch, the edges don't stay hanging. Next, folding it over the seam line and doing a top stitch. Now once the bodice is ready, I want to add some lining to hem the top and the bottom of the top, for which I'm placing the top over the leftover fabric and tracing out the pattern. Next, marking 1.5 inches to the entire piece and going to trim off the excess. Next, matching the edges together of both the bodice and the lining together and adding pins all around. Now here, instead of using the same fabric like I did, you can use a thin fabric like the actual lining fabric. I just had nothing left, so I decided to use the same fabric. Next, I did the same exact thing for the top edges. First, traced the pattern out, marked about 1.5 inches all around, and then trimming off the excess. Lastly, matching the edges together of the bodice and the lining piece and pinning it down. Also, do not forget to cut off the excess if you have any and sew the edges together using straight stitch from one side to the other. Next, folding the piece right in the seam line and hemming it using a straight stitch. So basically, I'm just hemming as normal as you would do with any other fabric. Just the difference is that here I had to add some extra fabric as lining, as I didn't want to take off any of the length of the corset. Now once you're done hemming both the top and the bottom, it's time to hem the side edges. To hem the side edges, I'm double folding it in a way that the width stays about 2 to 3 centimeters and sewing it using straight stitch. Now this is what the bodice looks like once it's all done, hemming all around the top and the bottom and the side edges. And next, I decided to install some grommets. Got this grommet kit from Amazon. I'll leave the link down below in the description box as always. And I also got a hammer from Walmart. Okay, so the grommet kit comes with some grommet base and the top piece, of course, and then a hole puncher to create holes in your fabric. I don't know what do you call this next piece, but it helps to hold the grommets together while using your hammer. So you don't use the hammer directly on the grommets, but over this thingy which is placed over your grommets. Lastly, the base where you place the grommets. Now moving on to install the grommets, I place my top wrong side up and marking 5 circles with the help of the main grommet piece, so I know how big the hole should be, and also use the ruler to make sure they are all in equal distance from each other. Next, I'm placing the base underneath one circle and the hole puncher above it and hemming my heart out. And it exactly happened what I was scared of. It didn't punch any hole as my fabric was too thick. Anyways, so I decided to use my scissors and started cutting out the hole. Not gonna lie, this part was a bit struggling at first as I didn't want to end up cutting the holes too big. Also, I ended up using my mini scissor to clean up the raw edges and it really helps. Now once it was done, I placed the base piece first, then the main garment piece, then my top, trying to fix the hole in the grommet really nice and tight, and the garment base which goes over the fabric. Lastly, place the long thingy on the top and trying to hem it together. And there we go, you have officially installed a grommet. I didn't want to film doing the rest as it was really tedious, but this is how it looks like once they are all installed. Really gorgeous, I know. Lastly, to lace up the top, I needed some laces, for which I decided to cut up some white cotton fabric from my leftover collection. So I cut out long rectangle pieces about 2.5 inches wide and joined all the pieces together to make it one long piece. If you want a detailed tutorial on this, click the video on your right where I have shared in details. And here is how my corset top turned out. Love the boning look without adding any bones to the top, plus the grommets and the lace-up detailing makes it look super 80s vintage look, but with a modern touch. So please don't forget to like this video and comment if you want to see more DIY videos like this, as it inspires me to make more videos for you guys. And I will see you next time. Bye guys.